I'm going to show you how I made this cute miniature tote bag. It's super beginner friendly. Anybody can do this. There's no zipper, no fastening, just the tote and a little box bottom. It's super easy to make. Let me show you. Right, to make this bag, you'll need 2 pieces of fabric for your lining and your outer fabric. I'm going to be using this diagonal striped cotton fabric for the outer fabric and this raspberry pink for the lining. They're both the same size. It is 20 inches long and 12 inches wide. And I'll be attaching wadding to my outer fabric. So I've got a piece of wadding cut to the same dimensions. You can use iron-on. Iron-on's great, but I'm going to stitch this onto my outer fabric. For the handles, I've just got 1 strip of black canvas, and that is 22 inches long and 2 inches wide. And I'm just going to make 1 really long handle and then cut that down into 2 smaller handles. Just to attach that wadding, I'm just going to sew very closely to the edge. We're using a very small stitch length. Back stitch. Do the same for the other end. So you can see it's very close to the edge, and I'm just going to trim away this little bit here at the top. For the handles, I'm just going to iron this strip. So I'm going to be folding that in half and then ironing that all the way down, creating a crease in the middle there. And I'll be folding this side into the middle, ironing that all the way down, and then folding the other side into the middle, ironing all the way down, and then folding it over again, ironing all the way down. So now we've got 1 continuous strip that's been folded. So now this is 1/2 inch wide. Now I don't need to worry about the raw edges because they're going to go inside the bag. I'm going to be stitching, I will go along the top here, all the way down, all the way down, all the way down to here. And then I'll go along the top, and then I'll come all the way back along the other side until I reach back to where I started. I'm going to use a medium stitch length for this one because this will be on the outside. I'm just going to sew just a few millimeters away from the edge of the fabric, lowering my needle down, back stitch, and then pivot, and then go all the way down. Okay, get to the other end, pivot, straight across, pivot again, and then all the way down the other side. And then back stitch. Now I've got my wadding attached to the outer fabric, and I've sewn together my handle. I'm going to cut that handle down. I'm going to fold that in half. Just going to cut that in half to create 2 smaller handles. So now I'm going to attach the handles to the bag. Just going to need my measuring tape, a pencil to mark the fabric, and some clips. I'm going to find the center of my fabric, just folding that in half. And I'm just going to mark. It should be 6 inches in. Yep. And I'm going to place my handles 2.5 inches away from the center point. And I'm going to give myself about a centimetre overhang. Place my strap against that marking, and I'm going to, where I've got the fold on my handle, I'm going to have that on the inside. I'm going to clip that in place. I'm going to bring that around and do the same on the other side. Making sure that the handle doesn't get twisted. And I'm just going to clip that in place. Do the same on the other end. I just like to fold that back now, just make sure that those handles are sort of in line with one another. That looks good. So now I'm just going to take that to the sewing machine and go back and forth using a small stitch length, back and forth a few times, 3 or 4 times. Okay, so using my small stitch length at the machine, I'm just going to make sure that that strap is against that marking. And I've got my centimetre overhang, and I'm just going to place my presser foot down. Lower my needle, and then just go back and forth about 3 or 4 times. I think that might have been about 5 times, but I like to do it a few times to make sure that's attached nice and firmly. Now I'm just going to repeat that for the other side. And I'm going to repeat that for the other end. So now you should have something that looks like this. So you've got both handles attached at both ends, just trim away your loose threads. And now you want to turn that around and bring those sides up together. Let's grab a few clips, and we're just going to line up the handles so they are in line. Clip that together and do the same on the other side. And then just pop a clip in the middle. And now we're going to start constructing the bag. So I'm going to sew just a 1 centimetre seam allowance all the way down on both sides. So I like to use my pencil to draw a line. This helped me so much when I learned to sew, to actually have a line drawn out that I can follow on the sewing machine. If you're skilled at sewing, then, well, you probably won't be watching this video if you're skilled, or maybe you're watching it for a laugh, who knows. But this is really me demonstrating how I learned to sew. I like to use centimetres and inches. I found it quite difficult to sort of understand the different measurements of the eighths of an inch or whatever it is that the experts say. I just use centimetres and inches. I've marked my 1 centimetre seam allowance, and I'm just going to draw a straight line straight onto that back of that bag. Now I'm going to, when I sew at the sewing machine, that will be the line that I follow. Just make sure that's all straight. So I'm going to sew all the way down, starting with a back stitch at the top, all the way down, back stitch at the top, all the way down, back stitch. Okay, so I'm just going to line my needle up with and my presser foot up with the line that I've drawn onto that wadding, and I'm going to use my small stitch length, and I'm going to start with a back stitch. And go all the way down to the other end, finishing with a back stitch. So not only does that line that you draw onto the wadding or the fabric help you sort of give you a seam allowance, it's really good to be able to practice your straight lines doing that as well. It really helped me when I started learning how to sew, which was only just over a year ago. Now I am obsessed with sewing. Okay, now do the same on the other side. Starting from the bottom end this time. Just back stitch at the end there. Trim away your loose threads. Okay, now we're going to box out the bottom. My bag will stand up. I've cut myself a nice little piece of cardboard that's 5 centimeters square, and I'm just going to place that into the corner here. So placing it against the stitch line. Don't go to the edge of the fabric, you want to go to where the stitch line is, and then I just draw my square on both sides. Repeat that again. So you've got something that looks like this. And the next part is scary, but once you've done it a few times, you will get more confident with it. You're going to cut away the square. You're going to cut that out. You're going to go all the way to the end. You're going to cut that all the way to the end. So starting from here, from the bottom, I'm going to just come in. And again. Make sure you use a nice pair of fabric scissors to do this. Now you've got something that looks really odd like this, and we're going to bring those sides together like this. And then just open that seam. I like to do this flat. Some people do it like this. I like to open my seam wide, and I'm essentially going to be sewing all the way along, and then always give that a few back and forth there. I'm going to mark again 1 centimetre, and in time you won't need the line at all, but it really helped me to start with. And then the other side. You can see now the bag is starting to take shape. Back stitch all the way along. I'm going to do a back stitch on this seam, and then all the way along, back stitch. Turn it over, back stitch all the way along, back and forth stitch all the way along, back stitch at the end. Okay, so I'm just going to remove the clip and start with a back stitch all the way down. And then when I get to this seam, I'm going to go back and forth a few times. And then all the way down, and then back stitch at the end. And then the same on the other side. Should have something that looks like this. This is your inside out bag, and if we just flip back the other side, we're starting to see things really come together now. That's the outer part of the bag done. I'm going to now change the thread colour on my sewing machine and start working on the lining. This is nice and simple. I'm going to fold that back on itself and just line those two corners up. I'm going to use a 1 centimetre seam allowance and I'm going to draw the lines onto my fabric. And then on this side, I'm going to leave myself a pull through hole of about 3 and a bit inches. 1, 2, 3. Right. There and there. That's my gap, and I like to put a few crosses there so that I don't sew. I'm going to clip that in place. Again, following my line, I'm going to line my presser foot up, the centre of the presser foot where the needle will sit, in line with the pencil marking. So I'm just going to lower my needle into the fabric. I'm going to start with a back stitch and go all the way to the end and end with a back stitch. Threads. And then for the other side, remember you've got your pull through hole, so you don't want to sew along there. I'm going to start here, back stitch, sew to here, back stitch, and then move my needle to here, back stitch, all the way along, back stitch at the end. Okay, so now that's all sewn in. I'm going to box the bottom. I'm just going to place that onto the fabric in the corner here, so lining that up with this stitch line. And now the scary part, cutting that away. Okay, so you just want to bring those sides together and just like we did with the outer fabric. I'm just going to draw my 1 centimetre seam allowance. And at the sewing machine, I'll just back stitch all the way along, back and forth stitch here, all the way to the end, back stitch, and the same on the other side. I'm going to keep my stitch length on the smallest length on my machine, lower my needle. Okay, so now we've got the lining, the box bottom, and just flip that out just to make sure that all looks okay on the other sides. Got your pull through hole, so that's all good. And then we've got the outer fabric. But now we're going to attach the lining. This has been turned inside out, so the seam is on the outside here, and I've got this side is turned the correct way. I'm going to place that inside my lining. Now I'm going to join up my sides, so just opening up that seam, placing those two seams together, and then I'm going to clip that in place. I'll do that on the other side, bringing the seams together, opening the lining seam wide, then just place those two together, lining them up. So now that that's held in place, I'm going to do that all the way around the bag, keeping the lining in line with the outer fabric here, just clipping that all in place. Just take this back to the sewing machine and I'm going to attach the lining to the outside of the bag. So I'm just going to start here and just back and forth on the seam and then all the way along, back and forth here, all the way along. Just going to remove this part of the sewing machine so that my bag can move around as I sew that in place. I need to pop that over this arm, and then it will just, I'll be able to pull it through from underneath when I need to move the bag along. I'm going to line the presser foot up along the edge of my fabric. So I'm just going to follow that all the way along. I'm going to lower my needle and go back and then forwards and then all the way around. End of a back stitch. Now we have lining attached. So here's for the fun part, turning this out, the pull through hole. And now just pop that inside. Everything fits, looking good. We're going to clip this all in place all the way around. And then we will finish the bag with a top stitch. I'm going to go all the way around it. I'm going to keep my thread colour the same colour as my lining because the outside is black and white. So if I have black, you will only see it in the white gaps. And if I have white, you'll only see it in the black part. So I'm going to keep it pink and have that little contrast. I'm going to increase my stitch length. Just make sure there's no creases in the lining. Make sure everything is nice and flat as you work your way around. I'm going to use the side of that presser foot as a guide for where I'm going to sew there. So just keeping that presser foot against the edge of that fabric and then just sew all the way along. And just go slowly over the handles, remove the clips out of the way as you go. Take your time on this part. Nice and slow, keeping that line really nice and straight. And then all the way around until you reach the other side. Right, the last thing we need to do now is to close up the pull through hole. So pull the sides together and with your fingers press those sides nice and flat. If you want to, you can use an iron to get that real flat. Back at the sewing machine, using a small stitch length, I'm just going to stitch that hole closed, keeping the needle really close to the edge of the fabric there. Back stitch at the start and just sew all the way to the end. Back stitch at the end, cut your threads when you're done, and that is it. And so there you have it. It is super beginner friendly. I hope you give it a go. I hope you enjoy. Let me know how you got on. Leave me a comment. If you like, please give me a thumbs up. And if you really want to, hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.